Discover your inner goddess and live up to your highest value and most abundant potential. Welcome to Grateful Goddesses, a podcast that empowers you to unleash your inner goddess and take the leap of faith to live your best life. Your guide, Karen Pulver, joins her fellow goddesses in soulful conversations about gratitude, personal growth, authentic living, and a bevy of topics affecting women today. Let's start the show with your host, Karen Pulver.
Welcome everyone to Grateful Goddesses. Whether you're joining us in the morning, afternoon, or evening, we're so glad that you're here. And whether you're listening to the podcast, watching the YouTube, or reading the blog, thank you again for coming. So let's talk, featured goddesses, about self-care. What is something you've done so far today to take care of yourself? Lara.
I have taken about 40 minutes to wake up. I sit in bed and I make the time every single morning, depending on what my day looks like. I set my alarm earlier so I can take my time to sip my coffee, and it's my treat of the day. I put real cream in it and I savor this coffee, and I just read anything I can, put a little pep in my step before I get out of bed, and I never start my day rushed.
Love that.
So that's my self-care.
How about you, Alyssa?
For forever, I've been waking up kind of crack of dawn and having a very sort of leisurely morning like you, Lara. But lately I find myself, and this is very unusual to me, sleeping in. Being an empty nester now, the demands on my time at the crack of dawn are very limited. So today, we're recording this on a Saturday. I slept in, made my way slowly to my kitchen for the coffee that I also savor every morning, read the paper. And then I've been taking very long showers. As I've talked about on the show, my showers are very meditative and they're getting longer and longer. I'm not sure what my water bills are. And I always start, Karen, thanks to you, with this dry brushing that you hooked me onto by buying me that amazing dry brush. And so sleeping in and long showers, I think, is how I've embarked on some new self-care rituals.
That's great. Alicia?
I will say that's a little hard about self-care so far in the morning because I'm 2 hours behind, so I'm just kind of waking up. So I was scrambling. I'm just going to be honest. There wasn't much in the way of self-care. Just self-care is honestly just being with all you amazing women. And, this is, I feel the self-care is whenever I can connect to people, I feel that that's my greatest self-care. So
that's great. And my self-care was every night I got into this really good ritual of filling up my water bottle. So you can see I'm up to 11 a.m. and it's only 10. So I'm ahead of the game today. I fill it up at night and put it in the fridge so that it's cold. And in the morning I drink it, and I try and drink 2 of these a day. Another self-care ritual that I love to do is actually by our featured goddess, Lara. She does amazing Glow Fit workouts. And this is my 3-pound weight, but you can really do any type of weights that you want. And I find for me in my 50s, my body sometimes is screaming, don't run. What are you running and pounding your body for? So the compound fitness classes that I do on Glow Fit by Lara, and I'm not just promoting her because I love her and she's a featured goddess. I truly love these classes. They work on all the areas of your body. And she has meditation in there as well, and stretching. So that's one of my self-care. So we talked about mind, reading. We talked about body, all the different workouts we can do, and spirit, perhaps meditating. And I find that now my kids, we say that some of us here are empty nesters, and we can do these things so easily, right? We'd have the time. But when our kids were younger, could you do those things, Lara and Alyssa, that you're doing now? Could you sleep in?
Absolutely.
Could you take a long shower?
No. I mean, as I got older and more independent, yes, but with little ones, never. I mean, if you took a shower, that was a luxury.
I'm going to add that yes, it was hard to add the self-care, but I always did because it was the commitment I needed to keep to myself, to like bring my best self to my family, to whoever was around me. And I always set my alarm early
Right.
to make sure I exercised. I got that peaceful time in the morning. And it's hard. Like, who wants to get up earlier before you actually start your day? But every time it's like, as soon as the alarm went off, what am I doing? And every time I went through the rituals of working out, having my coffee before everyone woke up, I was always happy.
Right.
So I have to say it's ingrained in me, and I always push myself, even with the busyness of the kids.
Yeah, I too tried my best.
Pays off.
I would try and do things the night before. I would always try, and when the kids were asleep, when I finally got them to bed, I would then set everything up, put my workout clothes out so that I could just put them on, fill up my water bottle. I would even, with my shakes, pour all the dry stuff in the night before, so all I had to do was add the ice and liquid and blend it. But you know, it's hard. It's hard to take care of yourself, especially when your kids are young and if your kids have special needs and challenges, for sure. But our guest today, Dr. Joy Shaffer, she specializes in helping families and helping moms and helping parents and children to navigate through those challenges in order that you can put your oxygen mask on first. Dr. Elizabeth Joy Shaffer is a mother, therapist, and advocate for children with neurodiversities. Her passion is helping parents and children through her programs, which combine traditional, Western, and ancient Eastern practices in a playful and sustainable way to promote well-being. She loves sharing the life lessons learned as a mother and foreign service spouse living in 7 different countries. She believes that education and information can change lives. One must think outside of the box, she says, when it comes to supporting the children who will never conform to living within the confines of a box. Love has the power to heal, to calm, to change, and to unite. Thinking outside of the box and loving ourselves and others unconditionally can change the world. Her passion has always been to empower children and their parents to overcome or adapt to challenges impacting their health, wellness, and roles: the student, the parent, the playful child, etc. Together, she can identify and create a plan to address you and your child's specific needs. She utilizes various approaches to support your goals, including heart math, cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT, acceptance and commitment therapy, ACT, mindfulness-based practices, and others. She incorporates mindful-based practices with other evidence-based health-promoting approaches to promote stress reduction, self-regulation, and well-being for parents and children. Information, tools, and practices address the unique needs and challenges encountered with highly sensitive children with autism, ADD, ADHD, and other high or specific needs. Welcome, Elizabeth, to Grateful Goddesses.
Thank you very much, Karen. Excited to be here.
And thank you for joining us all the way from Estonia. So you're already back, you're already ahead, I mean, at dinner time. Dinner's coming up. So you've had a lot of the day to practice some self-care. What are some rituals or activities that you've been able to squeeze in? Because your kids are younger too.
Preteens. So we're in that in-between stage. So they're a little bit more independent. Self-care, I always get up and do yoga, whether it's 10 minutes with Tara Stiles or yoga with Adrienne, or I actually get to do a half an hour, but yoga is my go-to in the morning. So like Laura said, the first thing in the morning, I have to have that time for me. So I did that this morning. And today I've found doing fun things with my kids is much more enjoyable instead of, doing things together. So we actually went out and did geocaching today because it was a beautiful day and we got to explore parts of the city that we had never done before. And it was actually pretty fun because we're in lockdown here, so you can't do too much. And so, we're out in nature and exploring new places. So that to me is self-care too, doing new things and being in nature.
And you do talk a lot about, like I mentioned, putting on your oxygen mask first. I know it's such a cliche, but it is so true, because if you can't take care of yourself and put yourself in that mind space and that, mind, body, spirit connection, how can you take care of others? Can you elaborate more on that?
Yes. When I hear of like the oxygen mask, I think of it in two ways, because I know, the analogy is if the plane goes down, put your oxygen mask on first before you put it on your child. And so I look at it two ways. The one is, can't save your other people unless you save yourself first. But I look at it, especially with mothers and women, I look at it in two ways. One is you can't give to other people when you haven't given to yourself. And for years, I gave from an empty bucket because my kids did have a lot of needs and required a lot of attention and required a lot of time. And I didn't realize over the years of meeting their needs, not meeting my needs, that I was depleted and coming from nothing. And so when I hear about the oxygen mask, I think of, do I have enough energy to give? Am I giving from a surplus, or am I giving from an empty bucket? So that's really what I help people with now, is how do we give back to ourselves so we are not giving from what we don't have, which I feel like a lot of mothers do. And the second part is the oxygen part. How many times do we just stop and breathe? So I like that analogy, because I like throughout the day, I practice a thing called stop, where I just literally stop, observe, stop, take a breath, observe, and proceed. And breathing is so important to just get us back in the moment. And like Laura said, with the meditation and yoga and breathing. So I look at that in two folds, just how important it is to make sure we're filling our buckets and we're stopping and just breathing in those moments of life.
And you mentioned that you have 2 preteens and they have special needs. Can you share with us about that, and then how you started your practice?
So the journey of working with kids with special needs started well before I had my own. I became an occupational therapist back in 2001. And at that time, I worked primarily with children. And then my firstborn was born in 2008. And we knew early on he had some challenges. And so he actually started therapy at 15 months, just because I worked in early intervention. I knew the signs. And my other son, who is 15 months separation in age, he also ended up having some challenges. But, I think sometimes people look at the challenges, but they also have some amazing abilities. And so it was challenging as a parent because of their challenges, but yet their amazing abilities, and trying to hone in on both of those. So that was my parenting journey, is raising these 2 amazing kids who also had some challenges. So helping them overcome those challenges, but helping them hone on their strengths. And it just takes a lot of work. And parenting in general takes a lot of work. And so knowing this journey that I went on as a parent, and then as a therapist, knowing what kids needed, and then as a child who also was a little bit, I'd say, a borderline ADHD. So those combinations, I decided to kind of create a different approach to helping families.
And Laura has some questions for you about your practice.
So okay. I was so curious, and it was so inspiring to hear that you combine the Western and the Eastern philosophies to teach the families how to go about the integration of these 2 things. Could you explain that to us?
Yeah, well, I feel like my training in the medical profession and educational profession that's more westernized, we focus on the problem, and it's very problem based, and it's focusing only on one area. Where, families and kids, we're a combination of so many things, right? It's not just, one challenge is seen in many areas. So I like to look at things more holistically. And through my own journey, I have really sought the wisdom of Buddhism. I actually joined the Buddhism Society when we were living in Ottawa. And I've been doing mindfulness since 2006. And I love the attitudes, the mindset, the approaches, and the way of looking at life through that lens. And I feel that lens of mindfulness, of the teachings of mindfulness, of the practices, but also the attitudes of letting go, non-judgment, surrender can help us as parents, because they really, a lot of our struggles, if we practice some of the Eastern traditions, we can actually let go of a lot of the challenge and struggles that we face. So that's why I like to merge the two.
That's an amazing thing to be teaching people. And I think everyone's a little more open now to mindfulness because they hear so much about it. And kids are beginning to learn in school, which is incredible, the mindfulness techniques. So that it's really timely, I guess. It's taken a while for the two to connect. It's amazing.
Absolutely. I find too, with the preschool kids that I teach, we try, and in the morning when you talk about breath work, they come in, they're all excited, and they sit down and they're everywhere. And I just like, close your eyes. We're butterflies and we're landing. And we're, you always have to, or, we're blowing out the candles on a birthday cake. Just to kind of get grounded and centered is so important to start your day. Alyssa, do you have a question for Elizabeth?
I do. I've been learning a lot about mindful classroom as well. I have a good friend who's been studying it and sort of working in early childhood, and it's so amazing. And I think my kids missed the boat on that. They're now like grown adults, and that really didn't exist in the schools that my kids attended. Are there other sort of techniques or methods, not so much that schools can be doing, but that we should be doing with, our young children to, whether they have challenges or not, but things that were sort of like, those of young children today that we just, with older kids, just didn't do, things that are more sort of part of, I think, your practice and should be part of, parenting. And along those lines, you mentioned that your kids really had the benefit of you being, a professional therapist and knowing what signs to look for. And I can't imagine how much they benefited from that, from early intervention, from early, techniques for sort of helping them along the way. What can parents be looking for? What are signs, especially as new parents, that they're just not thinking of?
Well, I think, it comes down to a lot of is what do I want to be as a person to show my kids what I would like them to be? Does that make sense? So I think as parents, what do we want to model for our kids, whether they have challenges or not? And, I've had parents say, well, I don't know if I should work, or I don't know if I should do this because it'll take time away from the kids. And I always said, do you want your child to see that the value of having fun and it's good to go and have fun and do things you enjoy? Or do you want to show them that adulthood is serious and stressful and all work? And so, I think as parents, when we're looking at what we want to teach our kids or help our kids with, what do we value and what do we want to show them the amazing things that they can be through us? Now, with that, in mirroring what I am, so if I'm happy, my kids are happier. Does that make sense? The whole, if mom's happy, everyone in the house is happy. And so I really think it starts with us. And if we can be happy, that helps our kids. Because really why I started on this journey going and helping parents is because I found I was in such a state of fight or flight and stress that I was getting frustrated a lot. I was getting angry a lot, and I didn't want to be this way. And then when I was faced with challenges, I was reacting in a way that I didn't want to react. And then I saw my kids reacting in that same way, not being able to handle those challenges. And that's why I learned I need to start learning and embracing. That's where the Eastern traditions came in with the meditation and the breathing and the mindfulness. So I was at a better place and more connected internally. So then when they needed my help, I could help them. And so really in working with kids and bringing that mindfulness, it really comes down to being in the moment. And so I just take opportunities whenever I can with my kids to teach them those life lessons, to give them those values, to turn off the TV, which, okay, with electronics and COVID, it's been terrible. I'm sure a lot of people can relate to this, but taking those moments just to go out and enjoy the birds. And I always point out really cool things that I see and just helping them to be that observer. My dad, we learn a lot from our parents. And my father, he loved adventures and he loved going to new places. When I was young, we would never go the same route when we were going on vacation or anywhere. And I got that sense of adventure. So I think with parents, when looking at what they can teach their kids, it's that adventure and love of life. And because that's what I learned from my dad. And so every challenge or opportunity, I look at the adventure side of it. So it's having that fun as a parent, I think, is one of the best things we can do, because I didn't have fun for years. I really did not have fun. I thought it was a job and a chore, and I did not have fun. So I think bringing fun into parenting is so important, and especially for kids with special needs that have challenges, and sometimes they're a little serious or they're a little stressed a little bit more. So having fun and that less stress are two things that are really important.
I know Alicia, our featured goddess, lives in the moment. She's definitely a present, just be person. Can you share some of your thoughts and questions that you might have?
Well, I mean, I just love, Elizabeth, how you're looking at it from, it's like, how can the parents really look at these challenges? And so many times, I mean, there's gifts within the challenges, right? So it's just so powerful to empower the parents to really embrace what it is, as special needs. The question that just keeps coming up to me is when we're talking about special needs, and I don't mean to sound ignorant or anything along that lines, because it's kind of like the scope of what special needs is. Is this something that when, because I look at anybody that could be having a challenge in the sense of, that you could incorporate this work with anybody. But when I guess my thing is there a more of a niche within the special needs, or like what? Special needs to me, if you could elaborate a little bit more. So for people, I guess, like myself, when we're talking about, a really, the parents that you're really looking for, because I feel like you can just help everybody.
Because I don't want to discriminate. I am all about inclusion and diversity. And so I don't like to discriminate or leave anyone out, because I do feel a lot of this is important. But I do feel that special population of parents raising kids with autism and ADHD is a niche that needs, I feel, a little bit more support, because they tend to have a little bit more stress just because of some of the challenges their kids have. And I've always been called to be a voice for those kids that can't be the voice for themselves. And through my experiences, both personally as a child and as a therapist, these kiddos have such amazing abilities, and they come into the world seeing things and being able to do things that maybe others can't. But because of their special skills, but sometimes their sensitivities, it's more challenging for them. And so I feel these kids need parents that are grounded and calm more than others. But everyone needs a calm, grounded parent. I mean, we all definitely, but children with autism, it's becoming more and more and more prevalent. And I feel, therefore, we really need to help these kids in another capacity, more holistically. And that's why I focus on kids with autism and ADHD more. But like I said, any parent, like, I'm very open to supporting everyone, but these kiddos, they really, I feel, need another level of support. And with autism, sorry, just to give an explanation of autism. So children with autism tend to have delays in communication. They're more sensitive to sights, to sounds, to touch. They're very, very sensitive to certain things, which can make it overwhelming. And because of their highly sensitivities, they can be overwhelmed quickly, and they can be under more stress. And a lot of these kids are under stress a lot because of their sensory systems being so alert and aware. And that's why it's also important for these parents to decrease stress. And kids with attention deficits, they notice everything, which is awesome. But it can also be overwhelming when you are picking up everyone, and especially in people's moods. Kids with autism and ADHD are so sensitive to their environment, including our emotions. And that's why it's so important as parents to be in check with our emotions, not just say we're happy, but be happy, to be less stressed, because these kids pick it up.
Yeah, I just wanted to respond to that because I have 3 children, and my youngest is very sensitive to emotion. And I noticed that as a young child when I was parenting her, and my mood was very much noticed by her. So even if I didn't realize I was raising my voice, as soon as I'm very emotive and the other children didn't react the same way to this, and then so if my voice was raised, I would notice immediately. There might be some tears welling up in my daughter, and she does have sensitivities to a bunch of different things. And I think that's like so important to understand. Like you might have many children and your children react differently to that. So I think that's so important to learn about in parenting. But then the other thing I was going to say is when you're talking about the self-care that the parents need to be able to come to the table, like being calm, are you finding that they are bringing those methods to that you're teaching them to have their children exercising and breathing and meditating as well? That holistic approach to the kids? Just one more thing, because I do know that exercise has been shown to have the same benefits as many things like antidepressants. And so how do you integrate those tools for the kids as well? Or do you?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, thank you, Laura.
Good questions, yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
A very good question. And thank you for giving the example of your daughter who could pick up your emotions before you even, said it. And that's the thing is our kids do. They read our emotions and our energy before they read our actions. So that's why that's another part of what I teach. There's so many levels that I work on because there's so many levels to us, but that energy that we bring. And it is important to be mindful. Is my energy in a state of frustration, of anger, or am I in a state of gratitude, like grateful goddesses, right? We know those higher states, that gratitude, that joy. So I do really help parents to start to be mindful of that and shift to those higher emotional states. But with parents, our kids learn from us more by what we do and not what we say. And so that's why when I teach parents, it's for me, number one is before they teach their kids is number one, they need to have this as part of their toolbox, living this, practicing it, then they can teach their kids. And I do there's some great mindfulness is everywhere now, and emotional intelligence, which is wonderful. And I do have programs that they can give their kids as well. But really the focus is on the parents, because this is where I feel is an unmet need to really focus and hone in on the parents. But exercise, you're right. And there's so many things that even when you said about medication, ADHD, there's studies that show that exercise and martial arts is just as beneficial as stimulants for focusing. Yeah. So, I like to show parents that other side, that they can look at the more natural approaches to health.
I wish that I had your help. I too have a child who's now a young adult who has ADHD. And I'm curious though about helping to navigate through the box, through the system that is putting kids in this one, way. Like what I'm referring to is the educational system. I really struggled and I became exhausted in trying to get her help. I had so many people say to me that she needed help, but then when I went to try and get the help at the school, they said no. And it wasn't until high school that a guidance counselor took me aside and said, she needs help. And I said, I know she does. Like, help me to help her. Finally, I got the help, or she got the help that she needed. And it just continued to increase her confidence and help me to calm down. But trust me, those were stressful years, having to argue that my daughter needed this assistance. So how do you help those families navigate through the system?
Thank you, Karen, because you pointed out one of the main stressors is trying to get people to acknowledge your mother instinct that something is wrong. And that's one of the things that the medical profession is getting better at, because they realize the importance of early diagnoses and early intervention. But it is hard, because especially for kiddos that are higher, I hate to say that word, functioning, but they are able to cope better.
Well, that's exactly what the teachers, that's exactly what the principal at her public school said. We had tutors for her, right, all through school. So she was getting good marks, but she was taking 5 times as long to study, or forgetting things, or, she allowed me to talk about her today, by the way. She gave me permission. But the point is that all of these techniques that she learned have now helped her. Now as a young adult, she's doing great, knock wood. But, it could have been done so much sooner. So yes, continue. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, but a lot of people felt like she was fine, but she really wasn't.
Yeah, and that's the hard thing, because these kids are pushing so hard just to do what other kids, can do with a lot less effort. And so you're right. I think that one is, as parents, we do, and we're forced to, you sought the tutors, you're forced to think outside the box and not always depend on the schools for help. Because as you know, as a teacher, schools are taxed with, overcrowding in the schools and the classroom. I mean, the amount of kids in the classroom, it's amazing that what teachers, the challenges they have with all the different learning styles and the support. I'm hoping I see a change in, especially like the mental wellness and the mental health support in schools, because if things in the utopian world is, a counselor for every grade, and just more of that well-being training. We teach math and reading and writing, but we don't teach well-being, and we don't teach mental health, and healthcare to our mind. And I would love to see that, because number one, I think that would help all of our kids, those kids that are struggling, on how to cope better when challenges come about, integrated in the classroom. But also, there are classrooms that I have worked with. I've worked in the school system for a little bit. And when they have done the mindfulness as part of their program, and we have things called brain gym, where you're doing these, exercises that makes your mind work in a certain way. And it's kind of a mix of Tai Chi. And when they do these with the whole class is more focused and centered and organized. So for me, I would rather see schools sort of add these 2-minute things into their day to help everyone be more organized and get the help that they need, not just our kids that need a little bit more, because then we're isolating them. But I think for parents, it is just keep searching for answers and never give up, and you will find the answers. You will find the help, and you will find that person, like you said, with the counselor that is there, that's in your child's side and in their court to help them through these challenges. But now with the internet, there's a lot of programs for teens, and especially that social emotional piece, and for the executive functioning.
Well, we had to do outside testing, and then we brought that psychologist in for a meeting with the public school. So that did help. And I highly suggest parents out there to just keep, like you said, keep going. Because we also got a lot of pushback from some teachers in the school saying, well, there's a lot of parents that are taking advantage of the system and saying that their kids have special needs in order to get more time on tests when they actually don't. The college scandal, that happened, so I'm curious about your thoughts on that. And also, Featured Goddesses, have you Have you encountered that with any of your friends' kids or your own as well?
So the first part of that question, let me answer that one first. So, it is hard. There are always people in the system that's going to take advantage of stuff. And it's just a shame. It's a real shame. And so, you can't do anything about that, but I just hope that they don't ruin that. I've never seen that where someone has claimed a special needs to get something, but I'm sure people have done that before. And it's a shame that it comes to that, but I haven't seen that. And what was the second part of your question?
I just wanted to know if anyone else here has, I guess, has seen that, or or if someone has dealt with that. I know for me personally, that was expressed to me by one of the principals. She said, there's a lot of people trying to get extra time and that kind of thing. So I guess I'm just saying that it's important to keep going and persisting and having that determined, like, that your kid needs help, and don't let anyone tell you that they don't. Laura, what were you going to add?
Well, I was going to say, I hope that the world is becoming more educated. I have a daughter who's studying. She's starting her studies to become a child psychologist, and her area is education and young children. And her hope, and like my hope as well, from what I've seen over the years, is that every child deserves the right to have these assessments, because so many people learn in different ways. And just because you don't present as someone to the world and to your classroom and your peers as someone who might have special needs and having a learning difference, everyone probably learns differently. And maybe one day in the school system, every child will have an assessment and be able to go forward and learn to the best of their potential. So I think that when people start all this banter of like, why do you need extra time if that is a thing that you need and you've been assessed, I think that there is all this banter that needs to stop. And hopefully the school system will start integrating things that, Elizabeth, you were saying too, that every classroom should have some time to learn about mindfulness and have these gym exercises that will help everybody. So I think those biases should be removed.
Yes. I wholeheartedly agree, Laura. I was going to say that, this seems to be something, the assessments need to be brought in-house into the school and be done across the board and for free, just as part of your school. I do know of stories here with people where to be able to get these accommodations for your kids, they're seeing outside psychologists. That is an expense that many, many people can't afford. And that means that kids are probably forced to, exist in a school setting where they are starting off, kind of behind the eight ball because they're not given these accommodations. And it's hard to believe that not everybody should have these assessments done and for free. And to your point, Karen, I do think that whole sort of Operation Varsity Blues or whatever they call that really opened up the world to all of these kids, and they're flying all over the place and seeing these psychologists, and I'm sure spending thousands of dollars to be given this time. So that's not, whatever all the stuff that they did, which was horrible, but that opened this up to this, okay, everyone's like, all of a sudden, what's a 504 and what's an IEP? And, people didn't even know what these things were, except for these sort of rich and powerful people who were scamming the system to get it. So I think there needs to be an entire sort of, rethink on this and how it's approached so that it is equal and available to everyone.
I agree. And I love how you talk too about what Laura said, just doing it for everyone. I think everyone has some kind of learning issue, I believe, because even if, we're not all put in this box, we're not all the same. some people are more visual learners. Some people are more auditory, all different senses that they use. And I love all of your techniques. You do talk about something I need to ask you about, heart math.
Before I get into heart math, I want to say one thing
Yes,
about that.
of course.
My children, they actually right now, so my husband is in the foreign service, which means he works for the State Department. So we move every 2 to 3 years. So my kids have been in 5 different schools. And so we've gotten to learn a little bit of different educational models. But my favorite is the PYP, MYP, or IB. IB is the one we're most familiar with. But the younger versions, the middle school is called MYP, and then the elementary school version is called PYP. And it's holistic learning. It's where you fit in the world. And I love it. And they have, and I'm going to butcher it, I wish I knew, they look at, there's like 12 kind of smarts, I think, 8 or 12. And so it's not just one, it's not just academic. There are so many different ones, and they help you to kind of see which ones do you have. And that's what I love. It's not just that, what are my grades? What is the academic? Yeah. They look at the whole person and how they learn. So I would love to see more of that model in the States, because I love that. So the heart math. So I became trained in heart math about 2 years ago, but heart math is something that's been around for a long time. It's based out of California. And heart math it's a process of basically helping people through these techniques to really come back to the heart and to recenter through their heart. And it's called heart coherence. And really, the amount of, we look at it and think everything comes from the brain, but there's actual more neural connections from the heart than the brain. I mean, it is, the more and more science is evolving, we're finding just the importance of the heart. And so through heart math, what I do and how I use that with my parents and kids too, is the techniques are just simply checking in with your heart and bringing focus and attention to your heart throughout your day and breathing in through the heart, because we're always here. Everything we're doing, we're all up here. And how often do we think, how am I feeling? And so heart math really brings it in back to the heart, so we can really get more heart focused. And think of the world if we were actually thinking from our heart more than our head. Like, how wonderful would it be? And so really the heart math it brings back, and there's some breathing techniques and some other exercises with it. But also with heart math that I like is they have this little device that you can put it on your ear or your finger, and it looks at your heart coherence, which is really neat, because it looks at your breathing rhythm as well as your heart rate. And it can show you what state of coherence you're in. So if you're in the, blue state, if you're a little agitated, or the green state or the red state, it helps you to see, and you can breathe yourself. When you do the breathing, you can watch your state of coherence get more coherent and less stressed, that you can actually look at on the screen as it's taking the measurements, which is really neat. So it's not just a practice, but there's a scientific way of measuring it, so you can see where you are as far as being grounded or coherent or less stressed and in that state of coherence.
Wow.
Is that why too exercise is so important? Because your heart is pumping.
Yeah, I would say definitely. Well, think of exercise period. I mean, when we move, like, blood pumps everywhere. We're just sitting, it's just sort of stagnant. Our bodies weren't meant to just be stagnant. We need energy, we need blood moving. But yeah, that's definitely one thing, because the heart is pumping. It is the main center to pump all the oxygen, the blood, to all the different parts of the body.
Mm-hmm. Alicia,
but
Laura, go ahead. And then
I was just going to say,
Alicia.
I think that the math piece and the heart and the breathing is so interesting, because if you become overwhelmed, and math seems to be one of those things that kids do get overwhelmed and you hear it so much more with math than in other topics, that they're they're intimidated by kids who math comes easily to them. And it's just when you stop breathing and you stop staying calm, just throw this whole lesson out the window because you can't focus. That's just such a great way of looking at it. I love that.
Yeah, I really do. I mean, you can look up heart math online and they have exercises right there. And it's a really, really great program.
Alicia?
So I just want to bring up, because, I'm always on the spiritual side of things. And one of the most powerful things that I ever learned was that somehow we choose everything that has happened in our life. So we can even look at, these amazing kids. Somehow it was, whether it was to share lessons with others or whatnot. But the thing that I, in this conversation of looking at is, it sounds like these, they're incredible empaths. And when we can kind of connect, I guess, in a different way. And even for empaths, and I don't know, Karen, you and I had this conversation where as an empath you need to protect your energy. So it's like, if you can visualize putting a little bubble around yourself. I'm just curious, has anybody really tried, like, saying, bringing that little image to them to be like, okay, if I bring a little bubble around myself, maybe I won't take on as much. So that's just my little spiritual take on that.
I love that. I love that because, and I'm like, why didn't I think of that? Because it is so great. That really is, because I think these kids naturally do that. They sometimes, but they don't always do it as well. I think they kind of go into their own world sometimes because the world is so overwhelming. But I want to tell you a story because you said about empaths. My kids and kids choosing their parents or the lessons, I tend to think kids choose who they want to be born into this world with, but that's just my belief. And I'm glad mine chose me. But, both of them, they are empaths, definitely. And I think most kids that have those sensitivities are. And I think more and more kids are born and having these amazing connected traits. But my little guy, when we were living in Argentina, he was three years old, and we were 4. I think it was 4. And we were in the living room, and he started having a fit, so upset. And we were getting ready to leave. And I'm like, what is going on? And sometimes we don't always understand our kids, what's going on with them, right? And I'm telling the story because I think it's so important to understand the levels and depth of them, since you brought up the empathic. He said, finally, he got out. Now, I'm surprised this day actually got out. He said, tell him to go away. And I said, tell who? And he said, that man. And my little son saw someone in the living room. And at that point, I'm sure a lot of parents would be like, oh, you don't see anything, right? And just dismiss what they were feeling or seeing. And so for me, I was like, all right, and I told him, I said, you get out. You're scaring my son. You go out. And I told him, you leave. And I said, is he gone? And so I trusted what my child was saying. And I think it's so important to be in their shoes and empathize and be open to whatever they're seeing and feeling. And lo and behold, we got into the garage, we got into the car, we were leaving, and he said, he's out front of the door. So I don't know what he saw that day, but it's just, I think these kids are special, and a lot of them do have abilities that we may not always understand. And then sometimes as they get older, they tend to, these abilities, life enters in and they kind of forget about them. But it's important to acknowledge these younger kids and their sensitivities and their connection that we may not always understand.
Well, especially because you say that they, and I know from my daughter, take on and absorb a lot of emotions around them. Alicia, my daughter too, when she was younger, and Elizabeth, she used to talk to someone in our home when she was 3. And she would say, like, he's not letting me leave my room. And I'm like, who's not letting you leave your room? Or he wants to play with me. It's the same sort of thing. And I got really spooked by it at first. I'm like, what are you talking about? And I did go to someone here in Chicago at the Ruby Room who's an empath. And she said, just acknowledge it. And like you said, talk and say, leave, or I empower your daughter to have the courage to tell that spirit or whatever she's seeing to leave if it's bothering her. But it is about creating that bubble. And I used to buy her bracelets and give her stones and, protective, all these things, thinking like that would help. But it's really about, empowering them and being open to what it is they're experiencing, not being ashamed of it, but at the same time understanding what it is and helping, them navigate through that.
I'm curious. I'm very curious about that. So as a occupational therapist and do you think that children are, I have no knowledge of, but children are just trying to decipher all the millions of thoughts that run through our minds every day, and that we do talk to ourselves, and is that part of what they're trying to develop, these emotions, and they express them in a different way?
So, I mean, in that is, emotional regulation doesn't come till in our 20s. We always want our kids to have control of their emotions. Really, that part of the brain does not develop till much later. And yeah, I think, kids talking to it's think of this crazy world. As an adult, sometimes it's hard to figure out, let alone these little kids who are coming into this world trying to figure everything out and process it all. So yeah, I think, they are figuring it out. And there is a thing called pruning where there's for the first year and a half, the amount of growth in our brain just doubles and doubles and doubles, and it's very fast. And then it's called pruning, where connections that we don't need or don't use kind of prunes away. And so we're able to process less and it's more organized. But some kids, that doesn't happen. And that's one of the things that they look at with autism, is it's not pruning. And so they are, continuing to take in everything. But yeah, I think that's, little kids, they are. Even as adults, are you not still trying to figure out about ourselves and what our passions in the world? And it's, yeah.
I think it's just important, what if I'm hearing right, is just to accept whether their minds are everywhere, just to accept and support and help through that while taking care of yourself. And, like I mentioned, when I read your bio, you also deal with cognitive behavioral therapy. I've done that, and I find that really life-changing. Acceptance and commitment therapy, ACT, mindfulness-based practices. So you really do help both the child and the parent. Do you work with older, like young adults as well? Like once you hit 18, does it stop, or do you continue with young adults?
There's so many things I want to do. I would love, because we, a colleague of mine, Kim, we started a teen group, because for me as an adult, man, I wish I had these things when I was a teenager, early adult. So I wouldn't have to go back and be doing these things now. And I could be in a better place for my kids, because I would have already worked on a lot of the stuff that had come up when I had kids that I realized I had to work through. I would have had a head start on some of those lessons. So I would love to do something for young adults. It's not right now in my, right now I'm focused on a 9-step program for parents, but I definitely would love to put that on as another thing that I would love to do, because I feel young adults, as they're finding their place in the world and their passion, their purpose, to have someone to help them pull that out and get solid and grounded, I think that would be a wonderful thing. So yeah, I would love to do that.
Well,
someday.
what you're doing for younger children definitely can carry over. I know with my daughter, even just like sticky pads and putting little sticky notes to remind her of different things, and a planner definitely helps. Setting alarms on her phone definitely help. And of course, all the mindfulness that, that she's been taught, and could be used for anybody, like we said earlier.
Yes, I just wanted to ask you, can you repeat an acronym with STOP? You were at the beginning, you mentioned that. It was great.
That's one of my favorite things. It's always what I teach first. So it's
Okay.
stop. So the first is stop. And because how much do we stop during the day? Like we're going from this, we're going to that, right? We never just stop. So stop. The T is take a breath. So
Okay.
I usually say like 3 breaths, you know, how deep you want to go, 4 count, 6 count, 8 count. And then the O is observe. Observe your surroundings, what you smell, what you see, what you feel. You know, are you sitting, you know, you feel the chair around you. Observe, you know, sensory wise, but also emotional. How are you feeling? Are you tired? Are you energetic? Are you feeling a little sad? You know, how are you feeling emotionally? Just check in. And then the P is proceed. And I love doing this, especially I say in transitions, when we're going from one thing to the next, to just stop and check in with ourselves.
Okay, great. Thank you.
I love that.
Real quick, I want to add one thing. So I love how you created the Grateful Goddesses, because I feel having a tribe is so important. And when we were saying about the oxygen mask, you know, I've lived in so many different, I think 7 different countries in the last 15 years. A tribe of women that you get to, that you can grow with, is so important for women. And so I am so ecstatic that you've created this, because I think more tribes need to be formed of women who can feel in a safe space where they can grow and learn together, because it is so important, especially as moms. We tend to like forget our friends and we focus all on our kids, and we don't have that connection, and we lose that connection. And then I just feel like it's so important. You said even one thing for moms is keep a tribe, keep connection, because it is so, so important for us.
Well, thank you. But it's, I was just thinking the other day, it's funny because I have a group text called the Goddesses, and you know, it started out just to list when the episodes are airing, you know, when to come on, and all that stuff. Now we're texting each other about, you know, I hope you don't mind, Alyssa, her son put out a new song, and she posted that, like, is that okay, Alyssa? I said that.
Of course, of course.
He put out a song. You know, we talk about just, oh, I'm tired, and, you know, all just different things to share with each other. And it's really great to do that. However you're doing that in your life, and especially with technology, like meet on Zoom with your friends if you're in lockdown. Send out these group texts, and join us too on GGTV on Wednesday nights, because you're going to be coming on too to help us to go through some actionable steps that we can do to move forward. So definitely, thank you. I know Alicia was talking about just being here today and talking about all of these things and listening to each other's perspectives. It's really, really helpful. If our viewers and listeners would like to reach out to you for your services, how can they do that?
My website, elizabethjoyshaffer.com, is the easiest, and you can see where to connect. And also my email, elizabeth@therapyintl.com. And I'm happy to connect, because that's what I'm here. You know, I love sharing information. I love helping. That's what I do. And because life should be easier and more fun. That's my biggest thing. And, you know, if I can help others to get to that point, then I'm happy to do that.
And your number one tip for parents would be? If you were to pick one?
Oh, breathe. Breathe and laugh. I think breathe and laugh are the 2 things.
Well, thank you so much again for sharing all of your tips and tricks and methods, and, you know, our discussion on helping parents as well as children to navigate through this process. And we appreciate and are grateful to you, Dr. Elizabeth Shaffer. Thank you for joining us on Grateful Goddesses.
Thank you for having me. I loved it.
Up next, favorite things. Opening up to happiness and joy.
Here we are on Favorite Things for Grateful Goddesses with our guest, Dr. Elizabeth Joy Shaffer. And we're going to be talking about things that bring us joy, happiness, that replenish us, that help us feel grounded and in the moment. For me, I mentioned earlier about my workouts, and I love doing my Glow Fit workout, and I love running as well. But my body, like I said, is in my 50s, and I do have aches and pains. So one of the instant refreshing gel that I love to smooth on to the back of my neck. I got this once when I had a massage, and she put this on me, and it's a cooling, it's like a rub. You know, there's lots of different blue rubs out there, but you can put it on your temples. Every night I put it on the back of my neck. I put it on my knees and my lower back, and I just fall into dreamland with this like a cool hug. I love it. So that's something that I like to use. Alyssa, what did you bring today?
Well, speaking of that, I actually have one of those like heat pads right now as I sit here on my neck, because I have so many aches and pains like you, Karen. So, and I know I've talked about those in the past, but for today, in honor of Elizabeth, I loved when my kids were young, finding content, whether it was movies or television shows that were, they saw as entertainment and I saw as educational, that we were sort of sneaking in. So I found the show, I'm not even watching it with my kids as they are sort of grown and flown, but I've been watching a show on Hulu with my husband. It was on a couple years ago and it's since like been canceled, but it's great. And it's called Timeless. And I don't know if anyone's heard of it, but it is actually a time travel concept where these three characters are going back in time to stop some sort of like big plot against America kind of thing. But what I love is the historical sort of the education about history that comes with it. So they go back to Nazi Germany, and they go back to sort of the Wild West, and they bring in all these sort of famous people from those places, like Josephine Baker and Harry Houdini and Ernest Hemingway and Eliot Ness, and they were in Chicago with the whole Al Capone thing. And I thought, how amazing if you have probably, sort of middle schoolers, preteen set, and sort of using that as a leaping off sort of point to talk about history. And they're getting it whether they know it or not. And I love these sort of sneaky ways to kind of, educate our kids. And I'm also a bit of a history nerd, so I love it, and highly recommend it. I'm watching it on Hulu, and it's called Timeless.
It reminds me of when I know it's like you're sneaking in the education and the history. I used to sneak broccoli and zucchini into brownies.
I did that too. Anything that's sneaky, I was all about it.
Anything to get them to eat the vegetables, for sure. Laura, what did you bring?
Well, I don't have it with me here. It's just nearby, but it's my silk sleep mask. And I have been using it for about a year. And and especially at this time of year when we've just gone through the time change and the light is coming through the blinds earlier. And I just I use it as a little switch that I put my mask on, and I go in my zone, and I'm so excited for my sleep. And I'm going to think about the stop and use that and pair it with my sleep mask. But I highly recommend a silk sleep mask, and it's the best one I've ever found because of the material, and it really helps me with my sleep.
You'll have to share what it's called, and I can put it on the site, because
Okay.
I've tried out several sleep masks and they fall off. So I definitely get a good one.
Even if it's fallen off in the middle of the night, I always put it back on. It just helps me get a longer sleep.
I've used it for meditation too, if I'm in a room that's not.
Oh, that's a good idea.
Yeah. Alicia, what did you bring?
So I guess I missed the favorite thing on self-care. I actually brought a little more nostalgic favorite thing.
That's okay.
So, okay.
I brought
happy. A little, yeah, it does make me happy. It's a little crystal golf bag that my aunt gave me after my dad passed away. He was an avid golfer. And so it's just a little reminder, I lost both my parents, and just, when you have pictures and things like that, but even when you can just look at something and it brings back, that connection. So.
It's funny you say that.
I love that.
I have this little crystal Canadian flag in what is this stone we just learned about?
Amethyst.
My son gave this to me. He is living in Canada, so this was one of his favorite stones, and he gave it to me, and I have it on my desk because it reminds me. These types of little trinkets remind you of people that have made you happy or continue to make you happy. That's beautiful. Elizabeth, what did you bring today?
I'll tie it into self-care. It may not be, but so this is a tree. I've been drawing this since high school, and I love the way the colors, and I did this for an art exhibition in high school. And then I drew a mural in college of this on our dorm. And this little tree has gone with me everywhere. Like, I love the colors. And this is like I swear it's like my Lego. Like, it's my thing. And I would say that self-care, I had a chance to do therapeutic art. There was I usually join like an international women's group, because when you move so much, you have to find your tribe somehow. And so I join these groups to meet other women. And one of the ladies, she did an art class. And in her attic, the four of us, 2 hours, we would just get colors and just put them on this piece of paper, and whatever we would draw. And it was just amazing how much we connected to ourselves and just connected through the painting. And it was awesome. And so I wanted to show you the tree, because that was just something I love, that I've always been part of me. But I want to show you one of the things I painted in this, when I was in this group, which I think will really relate to the goddesses. And literally, this is, you just let your hand go. So you don't actually paint something, you're just letting your hand move. So I don't, the colors are kind of, I'm not a green and brown person, but doesn't it remind you of like a woman in nature, like Earth? I mean, it's literally just, you let your hands go and move. Like, you have no pre-thought of what to do. It's whatever flows out. So I thought I'd share that.
No, I love that. I saw definitely a figure of being very grounded. You know, the tree reminds me of roots, that you grounded on the ground, but you're also reaching for the heavens. And that's what we do in Grateful Goddesses. We definitely remind ourselves of being present and being grounded, but also expanding out and getting out of that box that, you know, society can sometimes put us in, and trying new things. So thank you so much again for sharing your favorite things with us today on Grateful Goddesses. Enjoy your day.
Thank you, Karen. Thank you, ladies.
Unleashed your inner goddess yet? Thanks for joining us today on Grateful Goddesses. We invite you to visit our website, www.gratefulgoddesses.com, to access today's show notes as well as other helpful resources. Don't forget to leave a review. Until next time, stay strong and empowered to be a grateful goddess.